I think the whole House has been shocked and disturbed by the revelations that have emerged once again over the past few days. Peter Mandelson, it seems, helped Jeffrey Epstein and his associates make money. And that money was used to run his paedophilic prostitution ring. Those who broke the law to give that information helped make him rich, helped make him powerful, and share in some of the responsibility for the crimes that were committed, because they gave him the power that he abused. And no doubt for some of those involved, this was just a heady game of who had the best contacts and who could make the most money, played by a small set of men who took their thrill from existing outside of the rules. It seems that the more this thread is pulled on, the more that network unravels and the more shameful the whole episode appears. I think, generally, Mr. Speaker, there are three main things that must concern this House. The first is the now emerging conduct of Peter Mandelson when he was a member of the last Labour administration between 2009 and 2010. I understand that that is now subject to a police investigation, and it's good to see that the government is cooperating fully with that investigation. And I'm sure that when the police have finished their inquiries, there will be future opportunities for us to discuss that in this House. But the second issue of similar import is the judgment of the Prime Minister in appointing Peter Mandelson to our most senior diplomatic role.
Will you give way?
I'm happy to give way.
I'm grateful to him giving way, and he's making an excellent point. And isn't it a surprise not to see the Prime Minister himself answering these questions? Because at the end of the day, he is the one who made the decision to appoint Mandelson as the EU ambassador. He has to therefore explain his decision-making process, what he knew and when. So why isn't he here?
Well, I think, in fairness, it's not a problem for Mr Barker. It is up to the government to put up.
I'm glad it's not my problem, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend is right in this regard. It was absolutely the Prime Minister's responsibility that this man was appointed. And one of the things we are trying to dig into today is exactly what he knew and if any information was kept from him, who kept it from him. Happy to give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. This is a serious issue and he's dealing with it appropriately. He would have heard, as I did, the Prime Minister earlier refer to the fact that the extent of the relationship of Mandelson and Epstein wasn't known. Does he not share what was the common view at the time amongst many cross-parties? The fact that there was any relationship should have precluded Peter Mandelson from appointment to be His Majesty's ambassador to Washington.
Well, my honourable friend makes an incredibly important point, and one that's obviously central to our considerations today, and one to which I'm going to return. So there was the conduct of Peter Mandelson whilst he was a member of the last Labour government. There was the judgment of the Prime Minister in appointing him. But there was also something I wish to touch on this afternoon, the conduct of Peter Mandelson whilst he was our ambassador in Washington. I will happily give way to my honourable friend.
Can I commend the Shadow Minister and the Conservative Party for bringing this forward for the consideration? It's absolutely incredible what we're listening to, what's happening. When it comes to a full investigation, it doesn't have to be the ambassador and all those years. The 5 years that he was the EU Trade Commissioner, can I suggest to the Honourable Gentleman that that needs to be part of the investigation as well? A full investigation, and every iota, every T was crossed, every I was dotted for Peter Mandelson, and that's what this House wants, it's what this nation wants.
I think my honourable friend, as ever, is entirely right. I say the more that we pull on this thread, the more we seem to find. And I think that all of Peter Mandelson's dealings as a politician and a businessman should now be laid out for the House and the country to consider. I will give way one more time, then I intend to make a little bit of progress.
I'm very grateful to the Shadow Minister for allowing me to intervene. The Foreign Affairs Committee, myself included, had called for Lord Mandelson to appear before us on multiple occasions to explain the circumstances and process of his unusual appointment. He did not adhere to that request. I wonder, does the Shadow Minister agree with me that his failure to come before the committee sends a signal that the government wanted to hide something, that there were issues in the appointment and vetting process, and that had there been transparency at the early stages of his appointment, we would have avoided sending someone who was wholly unfit to be one of the UK's most senior diplomatic appointments?
Well, I think that's a very significant representation from a member of the committee. And it must be said that a failure of transparency at each stage in this process appears to have compounded the problems that the government is now dealing with. So what do we know now about the Prime Minister's judgment and the process that was going on in Number 10 around this appointment? We now know that the Prime Minister was aware that Peter Mandelson had an ongoing friendship with Jeffrey Epstein that continued beyond the conviction for awful offences against children. Not only was it in the public domain, but the truth is that in January 2024, a Financial Times journalist told the Prime Minister about it. And the Prime Minister admitted it in the House today, that it was part of the briefing note that he received from the Cabinet Office Proprietary and Ethics team. Now, we fully expect that report that was compiled by that team, the due diligence report, to appear for this House to consider. And reports of it appear in the New Statesman this morning. We're told that the report contains warnings of potential conflicts of interest surrounding Global Counsel, the lobbying firm which Peter Mandelson established and in which he retained about a 28% stake. We know that Global Counsel had Russian and Chinese clients, which, according to the reports in the press this morning, the Proprietary and Ethics team had serious concerns about. And we know, or at least we are told in the press, that the diligence report also referred to Mandelson's ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, clearly stating that Mandelson's relationship had gone over the point of conviction, and also drawing attention to the fact that Mandelson had used Epstein's hospitality in both America and also in Paris whilst the latter was in prison. I'll give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
He's absolutely right in his summary of all the misdoings of Jeffrey Epstein. But we heard some shocking revelations during Prime Minister's questions. In fact, the Prime Minister knew about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein when he was appointed as ambassador. Does he agree that the Prime Minister's position is now becoming increasingly untenable?
I think that there is no doubt that the Prime Minister's judgment is being called into the sharpest question at this moment. That we really, and it is becoming harder to see how any of us can rely on his judgment into the future. I will give way one more time, and then I must make some.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
The Prime Minister's judgment is most certainly in the frame. What about his candour? Does he remember on the 16th of September, the Prime Minister himself introduced the Public Office Accountability Bill, which at its heart has a duty of candour. Do we see candour displayed at Prime Minister's questions today?
Alex Burkhardt.
Well, as my right honourable friend knows, the government developed an appetite for candour and then lost its appetite. That bill has disappeared into the ether. I think too much candour would do this government harm. And so. I'm not going to give way anyway. I will give way in a moment, but I would like to make a little bit of progress. It was also reported this morning in the press that in September, following Peter Mandelson's sacking, that there was a Cabinet Office investigation into any further wrongdoing. And I wonder if the Paymaster General could confirm whether he's aware of such a report, but at least assure the House that if such a report comes to light during his investigations, that will be published in response to this humble address. Now, I fully understand, on this side of the House, we fully understand that the government has a duty to protect national security and our international relationships. Of course it does. But it must also understand that security and our international affairs are completely entwined with this issue. And the Paymaster General will have seen this morning that the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has announced that Poland, one of our strongest allies in Europe, will examine the paedophiles' links with the Russian intelligence services. As he said, more and more leads more and more information, more and more commentary, all relate to the suspicion that this unprecedented paedophilia scandal was co-organised by the Russian intelligence services. Thousands of the documents released over the weekend refer to Putin, thousands more to Moscow. We know that Epstein recruited young Russian women. We know that he held parties in Russia. In some emails, I understand, Epstein said he could offer, and I quote, insight on Donald Trump to Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. This is all of the ingredients of classic compromat. And it cannot, consideration of these issues, cannot be deprived of this House in the case of the Mandelson papers. And I will happily give way to my right honourable.
Julian Lewis.
It has been for years a matter of mystery and speculation where Epstein acquired his vast wealth. Does my right honourable friend think that the Russian connection may provide the definitive answer to that mystery?
Very good.
My right honourable friend is quite right that this is exactly one of the issues that must now be investigated, and investigated very seriously, not just by this government, but by our allies in other jurisdictions. Because whilst we don't yet know for certain where the money came, how the money came to Epstein, we do now know where some of it went. And understanding its ultimate source will help us construct a picture of this very complex and devious web.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will give way to my right honourable friend.
Oliver Dowden.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I think at the heart of what we're talking about here is, do we accept this amendment from the government opposite about national security and international relations? And he and I have both served in the Cabinet Office, and I'm sure he shares my sympathy with the need to protect national security. But there is a vast difference between protecting national security, for example, in direct intelligence reports from agents on the ground or intercept, and subjective judgments made about things that may embarrass national security or may embarrass international relations. And that's why the Leader of the Opposition was precisely correct to say we need some independent mechanism. So why on earth can't we agree that the ISC should look at each of these exemptions, and if they feel it passes that threshold, fine, we'll accept it because we need to protect national security, but it can't be to spare the party opposite's blushes.
Well, my right honourable friend, who was Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster and who knows more about national security than almost anyone in this House, is absolutely right. Because what is happening here is that the government's judgment and its behaviour is what is under investigation. It cannot be the case that the government can then decide what is disclosed. Fortunately for the House, there are mechanisms available to us, not least the ISC, which would do a very good job on behalf of the government of working with them to decide what information could and couldn't be released. But I must say, on the issue of humble address, built into the humble address mechanism itself is an understanding that national security is protected. There is no need for this amendment. I promise to give way to my old adversary from Islington North first, and then I will happily give way to the Honourable.
Jeremy Corbyn.
I thank the right honourable member for giving way, and I compliment him on the content of the speech he's made so far. This inquiry will have massive ramifications. It's an inquiry into the gilded circle surrounding Mandelson, which extends very broadly around this House and the civil service, business community, media and internationally. Isn't it time we had a novel form of inquiry which is not undertaken solely by Parliament or the civil service, but a much broader, more public inquiry which can look into the whole issue, because this is a basic corruption of our political system that we're looking at in the behaviour of Peter Mandelson.
Alex Barker.
Well, the right honourable gentleman appears to be correct in that there is certainly an indication that serious corruption may have taken place. And in the light of that, the House must consider very closely what the best means of getting to the bottom of all of these relationships and all of these influences will be. I promise to give way to the honourable lady.
member for giving away, and I think the House is getting a lesson that many families in Northern Ireland have had for decades, families like that of Sean Brown and the victims of steak knife, that national security is routinely deployed to cover the blushes of the UK government. I appreciate that the member is now arriving at this point, and would he support a wider review of his party and the government's application of national security to all sorts of disclosure cases?
Alex Barker.
Well, I think, without wishing to be distracted from the motion at play, I've actually seen Secretaries of State for Northern Ireland of all parties of successive governments try very hard to ensure that there is maximum disclosure for the people of Northern Ireland, whilst ensuring that national security is not compromised. So I'm afraid I see things through a slightly different prism to her. I will give way one more time, and then I intend to make some progress.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for giving way, Mr. Speaker. There is a well-worn route for dealing with these matters through humble addresses and otherwise, but previous humble addresses, when the party of government was in opposition, would name sometimes a select committee, and I was on the receiving end of that as then chair of the Public Accounts Committee. I just genuinely want to ask the honourable gentleman why the government, the opposition, did not put in the humble address that this should go to a select committee, because I still think there are ways to use the select committee corridor in order to scrutinise anything that may be more sensitive than can go into the main public domain.
I'm very glad that the honourable lady agrees with us that the ISC should be used in this context. I'm very glad that there is agreement between her and me that the front bench should be using the ISC in order to act in this way. And I hope that other members opposite will take the same view as this extremely experienced parliamentarian. I will give way one more time.
Jeremy Wright.
I'm extremely grateful to my honourable friend. Since he mentions the Intelligence and Security Committee, of which I'm a member, can I put to him this? The purpose of the ISC is not to act as some filter to decide what should go to the rest of Parliament. It's to act on behalf of Parliament, to consider material that Parliament, for good reason, cannot see. This is a motion about whether or not the government should disclose all the relevant material to Parliament. In this context, isn't it a perfectly usable and familiar mechanism for Parliament to use in circumstances such as this, for the government to disclose anything it does not believe the whole chamber can see to the Intelligence and Security Committee?
My right honourable friend speaks from a position of experience, and he's entirely right. This is the House is very fortunate to have the ISC, and this is one of the functions that it can perform. The government can have reassurance on national security, and the House can have reassurance that no material is being kept from it that the government might find embarrassing. And so I ask, in his remarks, I asked the Paymaster General, who I know will have had nothing to do with this, and I know is a man of integrity, to think very seriously about the options of gisting, the role that ISC can play in that, and make sure that the government is not marking its own homework, because it's very important that our constituents and this House have confidence in what the government provides us. And now move on briefly, Mr. Speaker, before I hand over to other members of the House, to the conduct of Lord Mandelson whilst he was our ambassador in Washington. And I think that this is very relevant for our debate today, because it exposes again the Prime Minister's lack of judgment in appointing Peter Mandelson as our ambassador. There is obviously now very strong evidence to suggest that Mandelson behaved entirely inappropriately when he was a Secretary of State in the last Labour government. But there are now equally big questions outstanding about what was happening in 2025 in Washington. And this, as I say, is relevant now. On the 27th of February 2025, the Prime Minister, whilst in Washington, visited the American data and AI company Palantir at its headquarters. The meeting did not appear in the Prime Minister's register of visits. It only came to light later. Now, Palantir, we should remember or remind ourselves, was a client of Global Counsel, the company in which Peter Mandelson had a commanding share. Later that year, Palantir received from this government a £240 million deal.
British companies couldn't compete.
That deal was granted by direct award. Given the allegations now coming to light, about Mandelson's conduct, can the Minister assure the House that the Cabinet Secretary will review the circumstances around the award of that contract and assure himself that there are no other such contracts, no other undisclosed meetings, that the government is going to go through all of the communications that Mandelson sent out whilst he was ambassador, messages, we must assume, some of which were sent to old business contacts, potential few business contacts, and so on. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knew that Peter Mandelson had maintained an unhealthy relationship with a man who was a convicted paedophile, and he appointed him to the role of ambassador anyway. Everybody in this House should be shocked by it. It must be concluded that had the Prime Minister been pressed on that point at the time, the appointment would not have been made. But the Prime Minister knew, his aides knew, and the appointment was made anyway. What else did he know? Only after this humble address, only if the government treats with it in good faith, will we know that. I very much hope that it is not the case that we find that there are gaps in our security and vetting process. If there are, the government will be able to fix them. But I think it's also likely that we'll see that there were reports that consistently raised concerns that were swept away. And it will then be the duty of the government to disclose who swept them away and why. Ultimate responsibility must rest with the Prime Minister. It is time for him to take responsibility. Yeah.